So, hello guys, I am John Patrick Sen Bandala from G207373, and now I will discuss my topic about the pictorial turn, and you just might listen and enjoy my discussion. Okay, so despite the apparent convenience of the semiotic or linguistic approach for the analysis of visual text, the most theorists, even those who read visual text in terms of semiotic principles, consider that they are substantially different from linguistic text. So, when we say semiotic approach, it is the study of signs and symbols, including their processes and systems, like advertisement brochure, emoji, emoticons, traffic lights, logos, brands, and etc. that signify something. Then, when we say linguistic approach, these are words that presented in reading are phonemically regular fit a particular pattern. This approach emphasizes the teaching of the letters of the alphabet as a beginning procedure. So, in short, guys, the semiotic is more on signs and symbols. Then the linguistic are more on words. So, yon. Then, how then can we make sense of images as communication? So, we could take up what is called the pictorial turn. So, the logic here, guys, is the need to understand picture as things in themselves rather than we simply matter that must be reduced to words. Like, we need to understand every pictures or signs or paintings that we see because it have a meaning or deep meaning rather than we must matter on the words. Diba? It's true naman, like, we just to analyze the one picture rather than to look for the words to analyze it. And now, Stuart Hall, a British cultural theorist, the semiotic approach has meaning realized in use. The realization requires, at the other end of the meaning chain, the cultural practice of looking and interpretation, as I said earlier. So, the subjective capacities of the viewer to make images signify. So, the semiotical, guys, is the cultural practices of looking and interpretation. Okay, so well, this sounds very much like the linguistic approach that their meanings are realized because they are translated into language. But Stuart Hall points out that the image works not just discursively or linguistically, but at the level of subconscious. So, like, it is as concerned with feelings as with sentences and stories. And also, it involves our being, not just our abstract intellectual identity. So, yun. Then, let's proceed. So, earlier, we described the physiology of science, the physiology of seeing, and this involves here. So, reading, reading or seeing the visual by Maurice Merleau-Ponty, a phenomenologist. He writes a very physical activity, even at the most basic level of understanding. We usually have to move our bodies to see a visual text. Like, we walk around a sculpture or through a park, and we move closer to and further away from a painting or building. And So the visual culture incorporates the reading of which it involves the body and the emotions, which therefore are a sensate rather than a purely intellectual means of communication. So the pictorial turn is obviously an analytical approach that is semiotic at some levels because it involves identifying signs and analyzing how they come together to make up a text within its context. So again guys, a pictorial turn is an analytical approach or semiotic because it identifies signs and analyzing. So yon. But but guys, it is not just semiotic analysis because in social sense being a science of science because this approach to visual culture demands that the analyst take into account considerably more than the arrangement of signs. So, using this approach means accounting for cultural and personal acts of looking and interpreting with all the subjective, emotional, and even our unconscious responses each of us brings to this work. So yeah. Then under this perspective, um, the visual culture is not simply an intellectual or abstract task. It also involves the physical aspects of the material world, and the material being of the analyst is seeing as being. So this approach, the work of the analyst, isn't confined to those of us who analyze visual text. It is also the logic of the pictorial turn is central to any number of highly intellectual and scientific pursuits. So, so so Michael Poligny writes the research scientists are able to practice their art because their whole body using the trained to using the trained delicacy of eye, ear, and touch is to put to work to test scientific knowledge against observed events. Then also the doctors, because the same in scientists, they rely on their eyes and ears and senses of smell and touch at, at least as much as unconscious reason. So by Merzuif, he writes that the visual culture is not simply the medium of communication and mass culture. It is also offers a sensual immediacy that cannot be rivaled by print media. That very element that makes a visual imagery of all kinds distinct from text. So, yon, and that's it. So, guys, I hope you might learn something from my discussion, and if you want to learn more with my topic, just recall my PowerPoint presentation to answer my quizzes. And my quizzes are just simple because nandito lang sa ating presentation, PowerPoint. Then, okay, let's go to my quizzes. So what do you call the sense of images as communication? A. Photograph, B. Pictorial turn, C. Painting, or D. Art? Second, who was the British cultural theorist who stated that semiotic approach are meaning realized in use? So who is it? Ito ba si Morris, Mirza, Stuart Hall, or Saussure? Then third questions. What do you call the study of signs and symbols, including their processes and systems? It is a semiotic approach, text, linguistic approach, or approach. Then, first question. who is the phenomenologist who writes a physical activity which says that we usually have to move our bodies to see a virtual text. It is a Stuart Hall, Merzuik, Social, or si Morris Merleau-Ponty. The last question, who stated that the visual culture is not simply the medium of communication but offers a sensual immediacy that cannot rival by print media. It is Berzuif, Stuart Hall, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, or Social. So yun guys, and the end. So I hope you enjoyed my discussion, and if you want to look, you just recall and ask me a question if you have a question. So that's all guys, and bye bye.